Too many decades include gone with two of Africa's poorest countries began the mainland's deadliest boundary warfare. The dispute among Eritrea and Ethiopia leftward tens of thousands corpse or injured in the area of fair 2 year. But in spite of world transactions signed in December 2000, the two sides stay on a war basis, their large armies yet cladding away. So which happened 20 year ago to Iskra Africa's incomplete war, and which expect is down there how it might eventually go to in late? The war began on May 6, 1998, sparked by a fight for monitoring of the boundary city of Badme, a lowly, dust marketplace city in no obvious importance. It had no one oil nor diamonds, but it did not question, both of Eritrea and Ethiopia requested it on their party of the boundary. At the period, the war was outlined as couple hairless men fight above a ridge. As the war distribution, so did the large movement of communities. The war ruined families on both of sides, recalls Kazahun Wolde Georges, who comes of the Ethiopic city of Adigrat, shut to the boundary. We are intermarried through the boundary and we cannot visit every some's weddings or funerals, says Ustdam Tould, who comes of Salambesa, a city one day separated in two by the boundary. Down there was a household of a countryside named Sirha on the Eritrean party of the boundary and their child Marital who on the Ethiopic party. Following the warfare, she dead, but her household could just see the burial parade of a peak through the boundary. It was not fair household bonds, the economical effect on the boundary trade communities was considerable too much. This busy business activities how we utilize to see up the war no much longer get location, says Kiflom Gabrimidhin, of a boundary countryside on the Eritrean party. The war ended in June 2000, but it was 6 months before a world treaty was signed, creation the Eritrea-Ethiopia Border Committee. It was intended to settle down the controversy above Badme one day and for all. But its definitive and mandatory governing 18 months after, award Badme to Eritrea, was not recognized by Ethiopia out of the preconditions of future talks in Eritrea. Eritrea, in rotate, refuses to say to its ex-friend before the governing is bound to. In no one party budging of their relevant official position, world among them remnant settle. Boundary skirmishes go on, each immediately, or via insurgent groups operating on their name. All the time, Badme remnant in Ethiopic hands. And down there include been some, greater implications for the two countries, and the broad planet. Eritrea says it as necessary a continuous big troop due to the uninterrupted invasion of Eritrean territories by Ethiopia, and it feeds how troop in mandatory domestic facility. Yet, which was initially intended to recent for just 18 months can recent indefinitely. For lot of such who don't wish to enroll, the just way out is to run. Present, they mob in big asylum seeker camps in Ethiopia and Sudan, or hazard their lives too hard to achieve Europe via the Sahara Desert, abandon and above the Mediterranean Ocean. Eritreans do up one of the greatest groups trying to do the cross, in spite the reality lot include dead, drowning in the traitorous ocean, or declining sacrifice to militants and drug traffickers who monitoring the path. Eritrea as well uses the dispute in Ethiopia to excuse suspensive the basic law, prohibiting complementary clique and quashing any disagreement. For a crackdown in 2001, lot of the editorial and journalists of the youthful individual newspapers were arrested. At the identical period, visible leaders of the governing human beings' front line for democratic state and judiciary, PFDJ, who criticized CEO Isaias Afwerki's processing of the war and his unwillingness to be reports, were as well arrested. Their location remnant a secret to the date. Policy prisoners never seem up courts and visitations are not allowed. By the government officials blame such arrested of threatening the nation's domestic safety. Eritrea is charged by the UN Humane Rights Committee for severe infringement of human rights violations, consisting probable crimes versus humanness. Meantime, Ethiopia, that is as well charged of humane rights atrocity, appears more than worried in domestic policy insecurity rather than the boundary city of Badme. It has newly proclaimed a country of disaster, in and try to suppress outcry movements through the nation. But could the stay off above Badme eventually be upcoming too and late? The again selected Ethiopic Main Secretary, Abiy Ahmed, has named for a peace solution of the deadlock and stretched an olive tree branches for negotiations to the Eritreans, who second the propose as such done by early Ethiopic leaders. World will really be advantageous to the two folk, but apparently, the must be predicated on honor of World Act, that Ethiopia continues to despise for date, Secretary of Data Yemena Gabri Meskel told. Yet, the latter trip by Donald Yamamoto, the U.S. Operating Aid Secretariat of Country, to Eritrea for the at first period in a lot year has added to the renovated expect. He as well passing to Ethiopia on the identical trip. This human beings are needing world on both of sides, and it is nice to listen how policy leaders are speaking of world currently, Eritrean Kiflom Gabrimedhin says. I am certainly the human beings will put blood pressure on their governments and safe world and back to their regular relations. Above the boundary in Ethiopia, Kazahun Wolde Georges is as well encouraging. We trust the way to Asmara will not stay closed for always, he says. More than on Ethiopia and Eritrea, Ethiopia key facts, figures and dates.